Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome to another session of APAC Dialogue. Before we start with today's guest, a very brief on APAC News Network once again. APAC News Network is a media organization headquartered out of Noida with a pan India presence and outside India presence in Singapore, Malaysia, and Dubai across Asia. So primarily we focus on technology deployment across verticals like government, education, healthcare, BFSI, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, uh, uptake on SMEs or the mid-market enterprises as well as the startups. So we would like to welcome Mr. Ajay Kumar uh, from ManageEngine today for the discussion. And what we would like to discuss is primarily on the ManageEngine portfolio of solutions and services, the update on that. Which are the addressable market, then the verticals that ManageEngine is witnessing maximum traction, then basically with the pattern of workloads across enterprises changing in the during the pandemic scenario, how did ManageEngine help the enterprises and what's the roadmap ahead? So maybe the best way to start would be if we can start with the update on the solutions and services that are currently available in the ManageEngine portfolio. Over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Rajneesh, for inviting me over to the APAC Dialogue Leadership Series. To answer your question, I would like to just do a brief introduction about ManageEngine. So, ManageEngine is the enterprise IT management division of Zoho Corporation, and ManageEngine's focus area is into serving the technology leadership in different businesses. So we provide, I think we have over 60 plus products, enterprise IT products, which serves most of the IT organizations. And to broadly classify the 60 products into six groups or categories, they fall into the IT service management or enterprise service management space. Then there is something called a security information event management. Then we have unified endpoint management solutions. Then we have identity access and privilege access management solutions. Then we have business analytics and the IT operations management suite. So this is the broad six categories under which the 60 plus products that we have fall into. And I think in terms of the focus area or the addressable market, so any organization with sizable IT teams, right, from small and medium to large to very large enterprises, having a sizable IT team will definitely look for solutions that we provide, and that is the addressable market we are looking at. So it spreads across verticals, and we are actually industry agnostic and vendor agnostic, right? So it can go to any industry. So any industries, more I think we are living in a digital era, and most organizations need these kinds of tools to manage their digital presence and all that, and that's where I think we step in. And especially I think the focus being in India. India is I think one among the third largest markets for management globally, and it's one of the fastest growing markets for us.
Okay, thank you. So now coming to more details on it, the six the businesses of the products, the way you categorize it, broadly they will the security, if we include identity management and access management, those part also. So broadly there was security. Broadly there was the operations management part, and there was the analytics part. So let's start with the overall this, because security and identity management together would be about three to four of those categories. So if we can start with these, and especially correlating it back to what has been happening in the last 2 years, when enterprises we have seen, since people have been working from anywhere, so a lot of heterogeneous systems and devices came into the network, and which sort of compromises the security and the identity access, identity management, it becomes even more critical. So, how have your solutions been helping enterprises during these times?
So that's an excellent question, Rajneesh. So just to set the tone, right? If you look at the last 2 years, so what has happened? People, I think that's a complete shift in the way we work, right? From working in offices, we moved to working from home, and now currently with the pandemic, I think more or less slowing down, we are seeing this hybrid work culture coming in, right? So what's happening is businesses are facing situations which they never thought about, right? And the impact is obviously on the IT teams to enable businesses transform to these kind of models, and that's where solutions that we provide come into. So especially, I think one coming to remote access tools, right? So now what happened is you, all of us, I think we work from home, we work from office. It's a hybrid model. So our IT has to step up to handle these kind of models. And I think you brought in a very important point about cybersecurity, and that's the idea. So what's happened is the surface area of attack has just gone tenfolds or 20 folds, because now that I am accessing the corporate network, sitting at home, using my corporate device or either using my personal device, right? So the issue is now the surface area for attacks has gone up, and the IT team has to scramble to ensure that all these loopholes are taken care in their policies, ensure that all the infrastructure is, I think, fixed to ensure handle these kind of data coming in. Or so that's the issue that we face in the current scenario, and that's where I think we see a rapid increments in digital transformations happening in organizations, where they had to support the new model, and the new model had to take care of cybersecurity issues, but work has to continue. Business continuity became very, very important, and we see that the old style of doing business is just in the last 2 years completely transformed. The transformation is just not a cybersecurity front. People actually, our organizations actually move to more rely on more cloud set of tools that can handle. So their business completely moved to cloud, which they were not used to. Right, brick and mortar companies suddenly found in a crossroads where they had to get into a new domain and where their expertise had to be built in, and they had to have tools that cater to this. So that is where vendors like ManageEngine come in, step in to provide these kind of solutions. And this has been a learning experience for both of us, right? So we actually, our R&D investments just went up from just focusing on our on-premises software to a lot of cloud offerings. So so currently, if you look at our portfolio, we have on-premises offering, we have cloud offering hosted on our Zoho Cloud, and we also have offerings that is hosted on Amazon and Azure Cloud. So that is something that we provide. That's the kind of flexibility we provide to organizations now.
So that this flexibility that you mentioned, that is great, and uh, the typical scenario, exactly why it is even more required. Maybe we have seen enterprises are now working in a multi-cloud environment. They will have certain clouds, maybe even public cloud from two, three vendors. It can be Azure, it can be AWS or Google. Then they might have certain applications on private cloud. Some applications could be on the edge. So then there is this typical. Then they might have certain application, the likes of maybe Nutanix or something, which is trying to be an underlying fabric to all these multi-cloud environments. And this typical multi-cloud environment, what are the management challenges software like ManageEngine faces, and how do you sort that out? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? So I think I'm having some difficulty here. Just let me. Yeah, can you hear me, Ajnish?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So sorry about that. So when I started off this dialogue, I did mention that ManageEngine is a vendor agnostic company, which means our portfolio of products integrate well with any kind of third party, right? So we understand that a typical enterprise, a typical business will have multiple vendors in their ecosystem, and it also applies. They'll have multi-cloud, right? They could be hosting on Azure, they could be hosting on Ignite, or I think the Amazon Web Services, and also maybe Zoho, right? Given this typical scenario, our products actually have this integrations with multi vendors, because we want to reduce the pain points, right? So, and also, for us, the idea is once they deploy a products in their ecosystem, it must seamlessly work with their existing portfolio of products they hold. So that is I think that's how we have built our architecture of products. And that's where I think we are seeing this trend where, and enterprises also want to pair their bets in such a way that they don't want to be dependent on one particular vendor, right? So in exigencies, they had to depend on situations where multi-cloud vendors support these kind of business models. And that's where our products are also I think fitted into these kind of ecosystems.
Okay, thanks. One question here is, maybe I thought I would ask this later, but I would like to ask here itself. This is the way you are discussing is the technology aspect. If you translate into the business aspect of it, say pre-pandemic, when you are managing, even pre-pandemic, there were a multi-cloud, especially enterprises were operating in a hybrid cloud scenario, and there were certain SLAs to manage each of these phases. Now, suddenly, this shift towards significant multi-cloud migration happening, necessitated by the pandemic. How did the SLAs undergo changes? Because they have to be very dynamic, and many of these, especially the larger enterprises, these SLAs are very critical. So, how did you see the change in those service level agreements?
So obviously with the pandemic, SLAs and I think business continuity as such was a very critical aspect, right? The business has to continue irrespective of where you work from. The kind of the challenges that businesses face, but still the everything like working models change. And I think so. What we saw, I think, from what we experienced in managing it, was what the customers usually tend to, I think,
I think there is some problem with the audio. I think there is some
okay.
disturbance there. Mm.
I'll shift to I think I'll AirPods.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. Now it is clear. So if you can start the answer from the beginning again.
All right. So the question was about what was the impact on SLAs due to
Exactly.
the pandemic, right? In terms of SLAs, I think usually SLAs are more or less the same, right? Because customers expect 99.9 percentage availability of the services if you are serving from the cloud. Those things were still there. Only thing, the surface area or number of users accessing your cloud services has just gone manifold, right? Because even from a HR, from if you look at departments, right? So the department like operations and HR, which used to be internal, now are accessing the enterprise network from remotely, which means the load on the particular services has just gone manifold, right? The impact, and if you look at permutate it to an impact on an IT team's load has just gone up, but their SLAs remain the same. So they have to deliver these services as whatever been ascertained or contracted by the organization. So only thing is what we saw is staffing up has to go up to manage the load, and that's exactly what we saw in our cases of customers, right? Customers coming and saying that we have to meet these critical. You need to staff up to help us meet these business continuity problems, and that's something we saw, right? In terms of managing those SLAs, we had to have adequately trained staff, and the staffing should also be incremented based on the loads that's coming into business. So this is the only thing that we saw in terms of how to address those markets.
Okay. And another, you mentioned in the beginning, obviously, since most of your solutions are on the cloud and they are, if I may use a word, not just technology agnostic, but even vertical agnostic, they are applicable to enterprises from all domains. Having said that, still specifically, I would like to understand, if I may ask, maybe from your deployment wise or maybe business wise, which are the top three verticals you witness the maximum traction? And more importantly, if you can take us through the use cases specifically in some of these top verticals.
Absolutely, we'll do that. So just to clarify certain things here, ManageEngine is just not a cloud or SaaS player. I think we have three models which I mentioned. So we started off with, I think most of our solutions were on premises, and with as I think we saw the business dynamics change, we went into having cloud hosted or hosted solutions, right? So we have a good mix of on premises and I think cloud and also third party like Azure, and we support that. So that's a clarification I want to make. And to address your question about industries that we support, so though being a vendor or an industry agnostic set of products that we have, we actually the top five or top three that industries that we cater to is the IT services industry, the BFSI sector, the healthcare, and maybe I can add even the manufacturing and education sectors. So if you look at the IT services industry, the use case for why we saw a rapid adoption the last, I think, 5 years and the last 2 years, which because of the pandemic, was because of remote work and the increased pace of digital transformation. That is what made IT service industry look for solutions that we provide. Now, coming to BFSI, I think the reason why BFSI is seeing an increased, I think, looking for increased solutions from ManageEngine is because of fintech as such is a front runner for cloud adoption, right? Because customers, all these customers that they have, and employees are accessing their services through mobile devices, through cloud, and that's where we saw a lot of ramping up in terms of adoption of a product. So, and we cater to the segment largely. The third segment which we cater to is the healthcare and pharma industry. But here again, it's digital adoption in healthcare, both in public and private sectors, right? That led to the ramping up of the kind of IT management tools that we provide. The other three reasons which I would like to say is compliance, cybersecurity, and data privacy, which led to a lot of adoption of these tools that we cater to. And the last two, if I want to add, is manufacturing and education. So manufacturing, obviously, what we are noticing here is the 2 years of pandemic, a lot of digital transformation happening, where manufacturing sector is moving away from the usual IT services software that they have into more SaaS solutions. They realize because it's a cost savings. They realize the cost savings and business continuity is always there with SaaS solutions and all that. That is one reason. Then coming to the education sector, I think obviously education sector, what we have noticed in the last 2 years with schools going remote, right? Children accessing school infrastructure through remote, they are front runners for digital adoption. And that was actually the impetus for the growth that you are seeing from this industry. So at top it off, IT services industry, BFSI, healthcare, manufacturing, and education are a top five sectors that ManageEngine caters largely. We also cater the government because we are seeing a double-digit growth in the government sector because of customer adoption of endpoint solutions, Active Directory, and network and server monitoring. All this is something the government is like very about, and they need tools to do that. So these four are, I think, or this six is the segment that we cater to a lot.
Okay, thank you. So, you mentioned here that apart from cybersecurity, compliance, and data privacy are two important things, and the top three verticals that you mentioned, IT services, BFSI, and pharma and healthcare are perhaps the most regulated sectors. So there are a huge number of compliances that need to be conformed to. So how does the manage engine, the solution, help the enterprises in these domains to compliance, to basically conform to these compliances, and how do you help them do that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, so yes, if you look at a portfolio of products, I think we have products which actually help organizations stay compliant. So we have solutions which help organizations meet the IT audits, meet regulatory compliances like GDPR, I think we have this CCPA that's there in US. I think we have the Indian law that's coming in, right? The privacy law that's coming up in India. So our tools actually help the IT organization within businesses to handle these kinds of compliance regulations. It could be HIPAA, the PCI DSS, these kind of compliances which are mandated for any enterprises or any enterprises with or multinationals, right? So these guys have to comply with all the regional laws, and we provide those tools which help organizations meet these compliances. So I think if you come to a website, we have actually a section on IT audit and compliance, and that's where we talk a lot about how our solutions can be used to cater to these kind of changing regulations. And I think it's becoming strict across the world, which each country adopting their own fine-tuned regulations. I think GDPR was the big one, right? Following which, I think we saw a lot of adoption of from coming from Canada, PIPEDA, and all these things coming in from, South Africa is adopting its own laws. So this is where I think enterprises are in a flux where they need tools which help them meet all these compliances globally, and we provide those tools which actually help organizations. And that's where I think we are seeing a lot of impetus where managing solutions can cater to all these global regulations and laws.
Thanks. And another thing, when you mentioned the product categories in the beginning, you mentioned about the IT operations as some of the products can be categorized under that. And when you talk about compliance and those issues, so if you can take us a little bit in detail more about the IT operation solution, especially in terms of ensuring that productivity is not compromised in the organization, the compliances are met at the same time, and even the optimization is done for their performance. So, how does your Manage Engine operations solutions do all these three together and help enterprises?
Okay, so just to help you understand, okay, we have an IT operations management portfolio which got 5 to 6 products, right? Just to give you a use case or to help the users understand how do we help IT teams manage productivity for an organization. I'll just give a classic example, right? So now that there is this IPL that is happening, and I think what's going to happen, what we have seen, I think what we've seen in organizations is the corporate bandwidth, right, is I think used by users to watch these this IPL matches and all that. So what's happening is this corporate bandwidth is being used for non-critical activities. So we have tools like NetFlow Analyzer, which actually manages the bandwidth, looks at the flows that going from the enterprise corporate network to the outside the network, and we can classify this. Okay, this is non-critical, and this should not be actually affecting our critical activities, and we can actually able to pause those kind of activities. So this is the kind of tools that we provide organizations to monitor the net flows and control, or I think control the or not tweak the bandwidth to for critical activities. So similarly, we have solutions that actually cater to compliance. Your second question is about compliance. So as I told you, we have solutions from the operations side which can stretch into, like, so say for example, we have something called the event log analyzer and log 360 product, which is part of the security and infrastructure and event management, which takes care of looking at so any activity that we do on your machines, right? Everything gets logged, and from that we are able to build a forensics of data, saying, okay, there is some kind of activity which is not mandated. Say I'm accessing from my laptop, I'm trying to access the financial server, which is actually with my profile as a marketing guy, I'm not supposed to, which actually falls into the auditing system, right? Which automatically alerts the IT team saying that there is a traffic that going from a machine that is not connected to finance, and this is a compliance violation, and a red flag is raised. And when an audit happens, these kinds of all this information is available as reports. So that's how we take care of the compliance and mandates. So these kind of tools that we provide in an organization actually helps I think customers manage these kind of audits globally. I hope the use case is clear for you.
Yes, now it's perfect, understandable. And I would also like you to take us through the analytics, the other portfolio that you mentioned. Obviously, most businesses are leveraging analytics as a sales and marketing tool to do more predictive forecasting for their sales and marketing and to gain very meaningful insights. So, how are you helping those organizations gain these meaningful insights through an analytics tool? You can take us through that.
Perfect. So here again, I'll take the use of a use case. So what we provide is an advanced IT analytics tool called Analytics Plus. So basically, it looks at all the IT related data. So in case, I have in my team, I think in my organization, there are a set of we have a lot of sysadmins or IT admins. Their job is to ensure that all the employee requests, say there's a new mission request, or maybe it's a critical, maybe there is maybe we need to change the configuration of a firewall. A lot of these requests keep coming in, and that falls in as tickets, right? So we have this help desk tool which manages those tickets. So an analytics tool looks at all the data and says, okay, there's a lot of password reset requests coming in, and I think my IT team is already loaded. So for a CIO, he'll be able to see that, okay, where is the request coming in, where is the load going in, where should I staff up in terms of handling these kind of requests. So this is how an IT tool or IT analytics tool help organizations meet those kind of challenges. And this is where I think we provide the business analytics tool or IT analytics tool to help the leadership to make decisions quicker.
Okay, great. Now coming to the business aspect of it, if you can take us through what is the go-to-market strategy that you follow, and under those, what are the kind of GTM initiatives that are structured? Is it vertical structured, or is it the way the technology horizontally, the categories that you mentioned? How is the GTM, and how are the partner network that deploys? How are they set up, and how do they work?
Okay. So in terms of GTM activities, so what in terms of globally, we have both the direct selling model as well as we have the traditional channel sales, right? So if you look at a channel for us, the channel consists of distributors, they are a set of resellers. We also have SIs to help customers, I think, deploy and I think implement the solutions that we provide. We also have MSPs as one category of, uh, I think, segment of our channel. So this is how I think in terms of channel activities and in terms of GTM, what we do is we believe in both digital and an offline set of marketing activities that we conduct. And as you clearly mentioned, we do have industry level focus in our activities. So if you take India as an example, we do participate in a lot of industry focused trade shows, industry focused events, and we actually target different segment of our audience, right from the IT admins to the VP of IT to the CIOs. We cater to these segments based on the requirements. We position our products corresponding to the audience. So these kind of trade shows and events and is something that we cater to in terms of lead generation activities. In terms of creating the awareness, we do. I think Ollie mentioned about events. We also conduct a lot of podcasts. We conduct a lot of activities around, I think, webinars and seminars that we conduct globally, where we talk about, take the knowledge, or share our knowledge about what we do in terms of technology and where the technology is heading, and how our solutions are staffed up to meet these kind of requirements. So these are all kind of mixed strategies that we follow globally, and I think it's been effective in terms of looking at the pandemic, post-pandemic. So what we realized during the pandemic time, I think we had to do a lot of virtual activities because of face-to-face was not actually working. And during the process, we realized in virtual activities, people actually do not, because of the attention span, people just came in for maybe their set of insights they want. And I think that's where we thought leadership is where I think people are looking at. They didn't want to spend one day completely on a virtual environment to gain knowledge. They were just looking for very, very capsuled set of activities where they could get those insights and move off. So that's the kind of things that we actually worked on, and we actually transitioned to those kind of models. Now that with things easing up, we are slowly stepping back into a traditional form of marketing, which is like doing trade shows and events, and obviously email marketing and all that is part of the marketing mix that we have. And I think your next question was particularly about channel and partnership. So we have very huge set of technology partners and transactional partners across the globe. I think over 200 partners is what I think we cater to across the globe, and we keep adding to it. So one interesting incident what we realized was during the pandemic, the face-to-face was not happening. It was more virtual, and what was missing was the face-to-face. Actually, when you sit across a customer and talk to them, we get a lot of insights over and above what was the agenda, right? And that actually helped us understand the customer environment much better. Whereas with in a virtual environment, things were not that easy, and that's when we realized the importance of having partners in the market who are the bridge between a vendor like us and the customer. So we are actually stressing more into getting into more channel activities. I think we are actually enabling the channel. We are doing a lot of knowledge sharing, training them, and we are actually getting a lot of insights from from the market through the channel to what kind of mix that we need to bring in to our marketing.
Thank you. When you say that your, if I may say, communication with the customers via the channel, that has also undergone a transformation, moving to more a virtual kind of mode during the pandemic. While that is the channel and the system integrator aspect who are partnering you in deploying the solutions, what about directly the conversation with the CIOs and for security, maybe the CISOs, or many enterprises now have the CDOs also. So, how have those conversations changed, and what are the main highlights of those conversations now?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, we used to have this health check that we used to do regularly, right? Which our sales team and I think our pre-sales team and the product management team used to visit these the big clients, big enterprises. I think pay them a regular visit, understand the challenges they are facing in terms of their business dynamics or any implementation problems or issues they face, and we are able to do that or maybe on a face-to-face basis, right? During the pandemic, that was not possible. It was all virtual, right? So but only thing is what we so we shifted to, we had tools which actually help with self-service models, and what we launched a lot of AI capabilities into our tools, right? This actually helped us, I think, shorten the cycle of these kind of communication. So any issues, that was predictive analytics, right? So with AI, that capability was brought into all our solutions, and that is actually helping us, I think, predict an issue before even before it occurred. So that's how we stepped in, right, when the pandemic came in, and that's actually helped us. And I think we see a lot of potential in AI. So AI is something that ManageEngine has been developing for the last 10 years. A lot of R&D has gone into the AI part of it. So, and we see a lot of great initiatives coming in. So something that we should realize is AI is something that we can't purchase off the shelf, right? AI is something that has to be inbuilt. AI requires a lot of data because it needs a lot of data for it to come up with models. And for an IT organization, data is the gold. And AI actually works on those data to give you a lot of analysis and coming with predictions and configurations, which actually help organizations to cut down their I think productivity cycle.
Okay, when you talk about leveraging all these large amount of data for analysis, these data are generated within different functions of the business. And while we have been mentioning the conversation with the CIO or the CTO, it's a lot of the business functional heads are also now custodians of the data, and it's through their businesses that data is generated. So now, as an IT company, what is the role with those business function heads who might not be that much technology savvy, but they are those business domain experts. So how are those conversations now happening with those business functional heads?
So predominantly our we when we our sales team or our the product management team visits the corporate enterprise, right? We get to have meetings with both the all the kinds of verticals, like the guy who takes care of the IT, the CIO, right? We also talk to that's basically the CXOs, the C-suite guys, the conversation, obviously they are looking at business, and they are looking at, so say let's take an example here, right? So if it's a bank, right, the bank has to ensure that their year on year, right, year on year, their support load is coming down, right? They are able to distribute the productivity in such a way that they can handle these kinds of loads coming from customers. So I think it's all about how can I get those data, right? How can I build insights from those data, and talk to my management about, okay, these are the kind of changes we need to bring in terms of process and all that. And that is where I think vendors like us with tools, as I mentioned, Analytics Plus is a great tool that actually helps the C-suite make decisions quickly, because it's got predictive analytics, right? It comes up with data models which actually help you understand, okay, how is the business impact if I don't have a data center set up in so and so location, right? What is my data load and what is the business impact in terms of having getting more customers to my organization. So these kind of answers and insights can be brought in with tools like that. And we our discussions are centered about how can, so we try to understand the business much better when sitting in front of him and discussing the kind of things that he's facing, and then we go and project the kind of solutions that we can help you with. So we go with our SIs and we sit and discuss with them to create those kind of configurations. We do a POC to help him understand how whatever he is envisioned he is able to relate with what we are able to produce as reports and configurations.
Okay, and on the business aspect, one last thing that I'd like to understand is, see, typically, as you mentioned, and Zoho has been there for quite a significant time. So, one, you have already have a set of existing clients working across the six verticals that you mentioned. So, keep having said that, keeping in mind the shift which happened during the pandemic, even from management perspective, the way you do your marketing, obviously, many of those engines have gone more virtual. So, how are you currently balancing between um, acquisition of newer clients, or, if I may say, uh, expanding the depth of engagement with the existing clients through upselling or cross selling or whatever? So, how are you maintaining that balance between the two?
So that's a very very important and interesting question, Rajneesh. So if you look at our portfolio of products, as I mentioned, it's 60 plus products, right? So, so what we follow is called as the land and expand model, where once we get an entry into a customer's base, right? So say let's say I'm entering a particular customer's environment with one product. We actually understand the product. We go into in terms of, okay, so over time his requirement keeps increasing, his complexity of IT keeps increasing, and our products scale, right, from professional, from standard model, from a standard edition he moves to professional, from professional he goes to enterprise, because his scale of operation is gone. So that's how we build depth. In terms of going horizontal, that's where our other suite of products did come in. So once we get the opportunity to talk to him about a particular solution, we are able to get insights about his IT environment. He shares about his challenge that he's facing, and we are able to project the other solutions that we cater to. And for him, by then he has built a confidence in the way we work, right? Our support, our culture that that shows in the way we interact with him. His confidence builds up in the company, and he's ready to look into our other solutions, because he knows, okay, this is a trusted brand, right? I have got good experiences with one product. I'm pretty sure the experience that I'm going to get from other products are more or less similar, because it comes under the same umbrella of the brand. And that's how I think we are seeing a lot of growth, right? So that's how we are building depth as well as the spread that we have. So this is something very interesting and very unique for ManageEngine because of the portfolio that we carry. And I think that's actually been helping us grow. Last 20 years we have been profitable because of this particular set of activities that we cater to. Land and expand is something that we hold to our hearts. We look at every customer as a great opportunity to push our other solutions based on his requirement.
Okay, thanks. This land and expand. This sounds really interesting. So, would like to end it with, if I may, ask you to look forward for the next 3 to 4 quarters. So, what are going to be ManageEngine's key focus areas? That can be in terms of expansion, new portfolio, or whatever way. What are your key focus areas for the next 3 to 4 quarters?
Yeah. So what we have realized in the last that the pandemic has actually made us rethink looking at the strategies. So there's been a complete shift, right? If you look so any organization, just not managing any businesses, right? There are two personas that actually affect them. One is the employee, the other is the customer, right? It is our whole business is centered around these two individuals. And what we realized is the current set of the customers are basically digital first customers, right? They have exposed to all the digital technologies, they've experienced digital firsthand. And on the other side is the remote first employees, right? Now remote is becoming the in thing, and between them comes the IT team, right, which is actually enabling both the digital first customers and the remote first employees, because they too are their customers. For an IT organization, the customer as well as the employees are the internal customers for the IT, and IT has to serve these two things, right? And this is the digital transformation that most organizations across the globe are facing. And our solutions are aimed to ensure that to empower the IT teams with tools which enable these two personas. So given that as a big umbrella statement, so where we are heading, so we are going to come up with a lot of digital transformation tools, right? We are going to strengthen our existing portfolio. We're going to take care of ensuring that we are going to serve the data or the products from the respective regional thing, because of data residencies that coming. So we're going to set up a lot of data centers globally. So that's the expansion that we are looking into. We are going to be closer to the customers. So we have something called a transnational localism that we follow, where we are going into the tier 3, tier 4 cities to set up our R&Ds to tap the local talent and use that to build our products. So that's something that is something very close to Zoho Corporation's philosophy. And that is something we're going to do at a global level. So in terms of expansions of our office base and all that, we are going to set up a lot of office spaces in the tier 3 and tier 4 cities, and tap the local talent to build our R&D. And so that's at the corporate level. That's our focus area for the next 3 quarters, into ramping up our hiring to focus on these kind of activities, because the challenges is plenty. The whole world is transitioning to a very different dynamics, and I think we have products and portfolio that can suit these kind of dynamics.
Okay, so that's the critical part, basically adjusting to these changing dynamics.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.